Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. On February 13, 1748, a three-masted schooner called the Lady Lovibond cleared the harbor in London. Aboard, the crew was deep into a wedding celebration. The party was for the ship's captain, Simon Reed, and his new bride, Annetta. But according to the lore, the ship's first mate, John Rivers, was watching the couple with a mounting sense of jealous rage. While the newlyweds celebrated below deck, Rivers found his moment. He grabbed a heavy wooden belaying pin from the ship's rail, struck the helmsman over the head, and seized control of the wheel. This map shows the English coast off Kent, highlighting a notoriously dangerous shallow shoal known as the Goodwin Sands. Rivers deliberately turned the ship away from the open sea and steered it directly into these shifting sandbanks. The schooner struck the sands at full speed. The hull ripped open, and the ship was swallowed by the tide so quickly that every passenger and crew member on board was lost. Rivers' act of sabotage became the starting point for a narrative so specific and detailed that for decades, few people thought to question its history. The central hook of the story is that the Lady Lovibond is cursed to repeat its final, fatal voyage every 50 years to the day. In 1798, exactly 50 years after the wreck, the captain of a coastguard ship named Edenbridge logged a near collision with a phantom schooner. He claimed that as the ships passed, he could hear the distinct sound of people celebrating across the water. In 1848, the sighting was even more realistic. Local fishermen in the town of Deal saw a three-masted ship break apart on the sands and immediately launched lifeboats to rescue the survivors, only to find the water empty. The pattern continued in 1948, when Captain Bull Prestwick recorded seeing the solid schooner racing toward the sandbanks, but emitting a radiant white glow. By the mid-20th century, the 50-year cycle was a fixed part of maritime lore. Locals and researchers prepared for the ship's return in 1998, but as the date passed, the Goodwin Sands remained quiet. To understand why the ghost ship failed to appear in 1998, researchers shifted their investigation from the Kent coast to the National Archives. They looked for evidence of the Lovibond's existence. A major 1748 shipwreck involving a prominent captain would have generated an extensive administrative paper trail. Since the early 1700s, British shipping has been meticulously catalogued in registries like Lloyd's List. These volumes provide a day-by-day account of ships, their captains, and their ultimate fates. The researchers cross-referenced these logs for the name Lady Lovibond and checked the records for captains named Simon Reed or Simon Peel. They found nothing. There are no records of the ship in any classification society, no harbor logs of its departure, and no contemporary reports of its loss in any 18th century newspaper. The investigation proved that while the ghost story was incredibly detailed, it was missing a foundation in historical reality. The Lady Lovibond was never a real ship. This leaves a glaring question. If the ship never sailed, where did the names, the dates, and the specific sightings come from? Behe and Goss tracked printed accounts of the sightings backward, looking for the very first mention. They discover there is no mention of the ship or the 50-year curse in any book or newspaper printed before the year 1924. The legend leads back to a single source, an article printed in a newspaper called the Daily Chronicle in 1924. The researchers concluded that the entire tragedy was 20th century journalistic fiction. The writer likely invented the story of the jealous sailor and the February 13th wedding specifically to coincide with Valentine's Day. By providing the public with specific dates and names, the 1924 articles successfully inserted a fictional tragedy into the real history of the English Channel. The hoax succeeded because it relied on the very real, lethal reputation of the English Channel. This is a view of the Goodwin Sands. Historically known as the Island of Hell, this shoal is a graveyard for hundreds of documented ships. The coastal sands shift constantly, creating an environment where a ship can disappear or reappear at any time. Stories like the Lovibond provide a human face for this danger. It is easier to imagine a tragedy caused by a jealous sailor than it is to accept the ocean's indifference to the people sailing across it. Today, the ship remains a fixture in local folklore and serves as an inspiration for the steampunk community, where the imagery of a doomed 18th century schooner resonates with the subculture's aesthetic. The Lady Lovibond never physically sailed, but as long as the Goodwin Sands remain a danger to ships, the legend of the 50-year ghost ship is likely to keep surfacing.